It began with the sound of breaking glass. Not an accident, not clumsiness, a deliberate sharp crack that sliced the quiet in two. I didn't even turn my head at first. The sound came from the kitchen, her favorite place when she wanted to make a point. Then came her voice. "Pay the rent or get out." The words didn't just echo. They stabbed. They stuck to the walls, to my chest, to the air itself. Rent. My own daughter calling it rent. I looked up from the newspaper I wasn't really reading. The morning light was weak, leaking through the old curtains I hadn't changed since her mother left. Dust danced in it, tiny pieces of time refusing to settle. She stood by the counter, fists clenched, face red, eyes flashing like a storm. And I thought to myself, she looks just like her mother when she's angry. But this was different. This was something colder. "Did you hear me?" she barked. "I can't keep paying for everything while you sit here doing nothing." Her voice trembled on that last word, nothing. That one landed deeper than she knew. I could have shouted back. I could have told her how many years I broke my back on construction sites so she could wear those gold bracelets, buy that little white car, live the life I never had. I could have said that my body aches every morning from the same hands that built the roof above her head. But I didn't, because when your own child stands against you, words become useless weapons. She turned away, muttering something I couldn't make out. The refrigerator hummed between us like a wall. My throat burned, but I stayed quiet. The silence was heavier than any argument. Outside, I noticed a shadow move, a neighbor peeking from behind their curtain. The gossip would spread fast. "Did you hear?" His daughter threw him out. Shame rose like heat from my stomach to my face. My pulse slowed, thick and heavy. I stared at the family photo on the mantel. Her, 7 years old, front tooth missing, clutching my neck after her first day of school. I could still smell the paint on the walls from that year, the apple pie cooling on the counter. Now she couldn't even look at me. She stormed upstairs, heels thudding like hammer blows. I listened to the bedroom door slam. The house shook. Then silence again. Long, choking silence. I sat there a long time, listening to the tick of the wall clock. Tick, tick, tick. Each one said the same thing. Leave. I poured myself a cup of tea with trembling hands. The spoon rattled in the cup, echoing the beat of my heart. Outside, rain started falling. Soft at first, then harder until it drowned the world in noise. I watched it slide down the window pane, blurring everything beyond it. Memories crawled out of the corners. Her first birthday, her crying when she broke her doll, her hand clutching mine the day her mother died. The years we only had each other, two broken people trying to rebuild something that never truly existed. And now this. I whispered, "You didn't mean it, right?" But she wasn't there to hear it. The house answered me with its usual creaks. Hours passed. I stayed in that same chair, my back stiff, my tea cold. Every few minutes I thought of standing up, walking upstairs, knocking on her door and saying, "Let's talk." But pride is a stubborn beast. It whispers, "Don't chase the one who threw you away." When the clock struck midnight, I switched off the lamp. The darkness felt alive. My thoughts spun like knives. I imagined her face, her voice, that word, rent, and the way she said it, as if every memory we shared was just a transaction overdue. I thought of the house, every nail, every brick, every cut I took to build it, the smell of fresh cement, the sweat dripping into dust, the aching satisfaction when I finally painted her room pink because she'd said, "I want it to smell like flowers, Daddy." And now she wanted me gone from it. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. How did we get here? Maybe it began when she stopped saying good morning, when dinners became silent, when she started locking her door. Maybe it wasn't just about money. Maybe it was about everything I never gave her. Love, time, approval. Maybe she wanted a father who wasn't always tired, always quiet, always carrying invisible bricks on his shoulders. Still, rent, my jaw tightened. I could feel something inside me changing, twisting. A part of me that had always been patient was beginning to crack. I whispered into the dark, "So this is what I am now. A tenant." My voice sounded foreign, low, steady, almost calm. I walked into the hallway, my footsteps soft against the old wooden floor. Every creak reminded me of the years I'd spent fixing this place. Her childhood drawings were still faintly visible under the new paint. She had once written Daddy's home on the wall with crayons. I had never erased it completely. Now I touched the faint outline with my fingers and felt nothing. The rain kept falling. I sat down again, this time in the kitchen. The smell of detergent and leftover curry mixed in the air. The fridge light flickered when I opened it. Empty shelves, just like my stomach. I didn't eat. I didn't want to. Hunger wasn't the thing that gnawed at me. It was the sound of her voice replaying over and over. Pay the rent or get out. If you've ever been betrayed by your own blood, you'll understand this story. Stay till the end, because sometimes revenge isn't loud, it's quiet. And it starts the moment your heart stops breaking. I thought about what would happen if I left. Would she even notice? Would she walk into an empty room and finally realize that the walls don't talk back? That silence doesn't cook dinner or fix broken hinges? Maybe she'd laugh. Maybe she'd feel free. That thought stung more than the words. At some point I must have fallen asleep sitting there, because I woke to the sound of her footsteps coming downstairs in the early hours. I didn't move. She paused near the kitchen doorway, maybe thinking I was gone. I watched her silhouette, her messy hair the same shape as when she was 5. She poured herself water, then walked away, unaware I was awake. When the door clicked shut behind her, I opened my eyes fully. The world outside was pale and gray. Dawn had started to seep through the blinds. It cast long bars of light across the floor like prison stripes. I realized then that this wasn't just anger or disappointment. It was something deeper. A wound you can't show anyone because they'll just call it family drama. But it's not drama when it's your blood turning against you. It's war. I got up and walked to the window. The neighborhood was quiet. Cars still parked, leaves wet and glistening. Life went on outside as if mine hadn't just split open. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass. She wants me gone, I whispered to my reflection. My reflection didn't flinch. It stared back with eyes I barely recognized. Tired, yes, but clear, calculating. Then let's see, I said softly, how empty this house feels without me. The sun edged higher, spilling gold over the rooftops. The light hit the family photo on the mantel again, catching the frame like fire. Her smile in that photo looked too innocent now. I reached out, touched the edge of the glass, and felt something inside me harden. The plan didn't come fully formed, not yet. But it started with that single thought. She wants me out? Fine, only I wouldn't just walk away. No, I'd make sure that when I left, she'd finally understand what it feels like to lose something you thought was yours forever. I stood there, letting the quiet fill the house again, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one being left behind. Dawn spread across the floor like spilled milk. The old clock ticked once more. Tick, 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 a new rhythm, a new resolve. I turned toward the stairs, listening to her soft breathing upstairs, and said under my breath, half curse, half promise, let's see how empty your world feels without me. They say silence heals wounds. But mine became sharper in it. Stay with me till the end, and you'll see how quiet revenge can sound when it finally learns to breathe. She thought the silence meant surrender. I let her think that. For a week I moved like a ghost through my own home, though calling it mine was beginning to feel like a lie. I fixed the broken doorknob that had been loose for months, watered the plants she'd long forgotten, and cleaned the rooms that no longer smelled like home. I did it all without a word. Every movement was a disguise, every breath a lie. She walked past me as if I were part of the furniture. No eye contact, no small talk, just the tap-tap of her heels, the quick rhythm of someone eager to leave. The silence between us wasn't peace. It was a wound we were both pretending not to see bleed. I started noticing her phone, the way it lit up more often, the way her smile changed and softer, secretive. She laughed sometimes, quietly at first, then freely, the sound twisting something deep inside me. Once I heard a man's voice on the other end. Low, young, confident. Babe, he called her. I froze mid-step in the hallway. Babe, it wasn't the word, it was the tone. It was ownership, intimacy, the kind of voice that didn't belong in my house. I stood behind the half-open door, listening. Her laughter echoed off the kitchen tiles, that same kitchen where we used to share morning tea before school runs. Now she stood there in silk and perfume, whispering like a stranger. My hands clenched around the dish towel until I could hear the fabric strain. When the call ended, she hummed to herself, a cheerful, careless tune. I stayed still, invisible. Ghosts don't interrupt the living. Later that day, she left for work and the house exhaled. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like a loaded gun waiting to go off. I started to tidy up the counter, though my hands had begun to tremble without reason. That's when I saw it. A folder half tucked under a pile of unopened mail. Something official printed on clean white paper. I pulled it closer. The letters hit me harder than her scream had. I blinked, reading the details once, twice, again, because the words refused to make sense. My name, my own name, was scratched out. Hers stood bold and clean above it, neat in black ink. I felt the floor shift under me. For a long moment I just stood there, staring at it, the paper trembling slightly between my fingers. Then I sat down, in that chair, the same one I'd carved our initials into when she turned 13. D+M, I'd etched, thinking it would always mean something. Now I ran my thumb over the faint grooves, and the irony stung. The same chair where she used to sit for bedtime stories had become my witness. The ink on that form seemed to pulse, alive, mocking me. I traced the edges of the document slowly. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was her declaration of war. I wanted to rip it, burn it, scream her name till the walls cracked. But I didn't. I just sat there, the ticking clock marking the rhythm of betrayal. When she came home that night, she walked right past me, humming again. She didn't even notice the papers were gone from the counter, because I'd already hidden them. I watched her drop her purse on the couch and scroll through her phone with a smile. That same man's voice spilled from the speaker again, casual, warm, too familiar. She didn't see me watching from the shadowed hallway. Something in me broke then, quietly, neatly, the way a bone snaps under pressure without sound. I realized this wasn't about money. It was about control. She wasn't drowning in bills like she claimed. She wasn't desperate. She was preparing. For what, I didn't know. But I intended to find out that night. I didn't sleep. The house creaked. Pipes whispered. The refrigerator hummed its lonely tune. The sounds of a place pretending to still be alive. I sat at the kitchen table, the property transfer agreement in front of me, the air cold against my bare arms. I thought of all the times I'd carried her when she was sick. The nights I'd stayed awake listening for her cough. The times I skipped meals so she'd never see an empty fridge. All of it, now worth less than a piece of paper. Around midnight, I opened the drawer under the stove, the one she never touched. Inside was the old house deed. Faded, edges curled, but there it was. My name written clean and permanent. I smiled. Not the kind of smile people wear for happiness, but the quiet kind that hides behind bitterness. My right was still intact. My name was still the root of this place. She wanted control. I wanted peace. But peace doesn't come easy when betrayal wears your daughter's face. The next morning she came downstairs late, her hair perfect, lipstick red enough to wound. She poured coffee, never looking at me. "Don't forget," she said, scrolling through her phone. "The gas bill's due." I nodded, pretending to care. "I'll take care of it." She smiled, that small, smug smile that said she'd already won. When she left for work, I stood by the window and watched her drive away. Her taillights disappeared down the street, and for the first time I didn't feel sadness, just stillness and like the air before a storm. I turned back to the table. The property transfer agreement lay open beside the deed, two opposites staring at each other, her future and my past. I poured myself a cup of coffee and thought about all the years I'd spent giving her everything. Then I thought about the man on the phone, the laughter, the word babe, and something colder than grief settled in my chest. I pulled out my phone. My hands didn't shake this time. My voice didn't waver. "Good morning," I said when the agent answered. "I'm calling about selling a property." "A private sale?" "No listings, discreet," the words rolled out smooth, steady. I gave him the address, the details, everything he needed. He said he'd send someone over by tomorrow for a quiet valuation. "Don't tell anyone," I added. "Of course," he said. "You can trust us." Trust. What a strange word. I ended the call and sat back, listening to the hum of the fridge again. The same sound that had always annoyed me now felt like applause. That night she came home and asked, "Did you pay the gas bill?" "Yes," I said. She nodded, not looking up, and walked away. She didn't notice the faint smile tugging at my lips. The house was still hers, one for now. The air still smelled of her perfume, her coffee, her victory. But underneath it all, a different scent was rising. The scent of endings. I moved through the rooms one last time that evening. The walls seemed to whisper as I passed, memories clinging like dust. Her laughter when she was 6, her sobs when her mother left. My promise to never let her feel abandoned. I broke that promise years ago, maybe without knowing it. But now she'd broken something worse. In her room, the window was slightly open. A breeze carried in the faint smell of rain. I stood there for a moment, staring at the glow of her vanity mirror, the lipsticks lined up like soldiers. Each one a color of a life I didn't recognize anymore. I closed the door softly behind me. Back in my room, I took the old deed and placed it in a brown envelope. My name gleamed faintly under the lamplight. I traced it with my fingertip, slow and deliberate, as if committing it to memory. For years I had thought love was patience, that if I stayed quiet long enough, forgiveness would come on its own. But silence doesn't heal betrayal. It hides it, feeds it, lets it grow teeth, and mine had just started to show. As the clock struck midnight, I folded the property transfer agreement once, then twice, and slipped it into my drawer. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I wanted her to think I was still the same man, soft, harmless, broken. Let her laugh with her lover, let her plan, let her think she'd won, because soon, when she least expected it, the house she thought she owned would vanish from beneath her feet. When she left for work the next morning, I stood at the window again, phone in hand. My reflection stared back at me, tired, older, but sharper. I dialed the agent's number again, my voice steady as stone. "I'm ready to proceed," I said. Outside, the sun rose quietly, casting light across the garden she never tended. The petals shimmered with dew, bright, fragile, temporary. I watched her car disappear around the corner and whispered to the empty house, "You wanted control, didn't you? You're about to lose it all." The phone call ended with a confirmation. Papers to be prepared. Cash buyer interested, inspection set for Thursday. A smile crept across my face, slow, tired, dangerous. She thought the silence meant surrender. She was wrong. You think revenge is loud, like thunder, like shouting, but it isn't. It's quiet, controlled, precise. Stay till the end, and you'll see how a calm voice can destroy more than anger ever could. It wasn't revenge at first. It was justice. Or at least that's what I told myself. The morning I decided to sell the house, the sky was a dull gray, that kind of color that makes you feel like the whole world is holding its breath. I stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the old wall clock that had ticked through every fight, every silent dinner, every night she came home late. When the agent picked up, his voice was brisk, professional, unaware that every word he spoke was slicing through history. "Private sale, you said? No listing?" "Yes," I answered. "Cash only. Quiet deal." He paused. "May I ask why?" I smiled to myself, though he couldn't see it. Because some things deserve to end quietly. The papers arrived within days, no clean, folded, harmless looking. The kind of papers that end lives without spilling blood. The agent came by that afternoon. He was polite, almost too polite, tiptoeing through the rooms as if he could sense something heavy in the air. He complimented the floors, the structure, the space. I almost laughed. If he only knew what those walls had heard. He handed me the contract, his voice low and efficient. "Just sign here, sir, and here. And again, please." Every signature felt like pressing a blade into my own skin, and slow, deliberate. The pen glided across the paper with a softness that mocked me. Smooth, final, like a knife through silk. I didn't tell him that I'd built this house myself, brick by brick, year after year, through blisters and sweat. That each nail carried a story. That the paint on the living room walls was still the same color she picked when she was 10. "Peach sunset," she called it. I didn't say any of that. He was just a stranger doing his job, and I was a father quietly selling the battlefield of his life. When he left, I stood in the hallway for a long time, the silence pressing against me. The echo of the door closing felt like the last heartbeat of something sacred. That night I practiced calmness in the mirror. The same way I used to rehearse speeches for her school events. "You'll do great, sweetheart," I'd tell her, straightening her hair ribbon, hiding my nerves behind a smile. Only this time I wasn't preparing for a proud father's speech. I was preparing for war. The man in the mirror didn't look like a father anymore. He looked like a ghost learning how to breathe again. Every night, I repeated the same ritual. Shave, comb my hair, fix my shirt. Rehearse the words I'd say when the time came. It's done. It sounded peaceful in my head, but beneath that peace was something darker, humming quietly, the ache of a heart pretending to be stone. On Wednesday, I tried to bridge the silence. I asked her if she wanted dinner together. She didn't even glance up from her phone. "I'm busy," she said, brushing past me, perfume sharp in the air. I nodded, smiling like a man who hadn't already sealed her fate. Later I heard her laugh again, that same light, careless laugh that used to make me proud once. It used to mean she was happy. Now it meant she'd forgotten who paid the price for her comfort. By Friday, everything was done. The agent called to confirm. "Congratulations, sir. The buyer wired the amount this morning. The house is officially transferred." "Transferred," I repeated. The word felt strange, cold, bureaucratic. Like the word for a body being moved from one room to another. I hung up and stared at the keys on the table. My fingers traced them absently. They no longer meant anything. The house, our house, no longer belonged to her, to me, to any of our memories. It belonged to a stranger who didn't know how many tears had soaked into these floors. I sat there listening to the emptiness breathe. The air felt lighter now, strangely cleaner, as if all the poison had finally been exhaled. Maybe I'd been holding my breath for years without realizing it. That evening I brewed tea, her favorite chamomile with honey. The smell filled the house like a ghost of peace, a scent from when things were still good. I poured it into her cup, placed it neatly on the table and waited. When I heard her car pull up outside, my heart didn't race. It slowed. Every beat felt deliberate. I leaned back in her chair, yes, her chair, the one she always claimed as her spot now, and watched the door. She came in humming some pop song I didn't recognize. Her bag slung over her shoulder, her phone still in her hand. She smiled faintly, not at me, but at something on her screen. Maybe him. "Hey," she said casually, walking past me toward the counter. "Did you eat?" "Not yet," I said, my voice steady. She was distracted, opening the fridge, taking out something small. She didn't notice that the paperwork, the sale receipts, the documents, were stacked neatly beside her cup. I watched her open the fridge, grab a yogurt, hum again. She looked so normal, so calm, so unaware. I studied her like you study someone in a dream, detached but curious. She sat down opposite me, spoon in hand, still looking at her phone. "You're quiet again," she said, smirking a little. "Everything okay?" I smiled. "Better than ever." She looked up for a second, frowning slightly. "Really?" "Yes," I said softly. "Really?" The clock ticked between us. A small rhythm and a large silence. I thought about all the years we'd lived here. The birthday candles, the laughter, the shouting, the slammed doors, the apologies that never came. All of it blending into this one still moment. Her and me sitting across the table, pretending we were still family. She didn't notice me watching her. She didn't see the small smile I couldn't hide. When she finally caught it, she paused. "Why are you smiling like that?" The question hung in the air, fragile, uncertain. I reached into the folder beside me and slid the paper across the table. The sale receipt. Fresh ink, still smelling faintly of the printer. Her eyes flicked to it, curious, confused. She leaned forward, scanning the words. At first she didn't understand. Her lips moved silently as she read. Her brow furrowed. Then slowly the color drained from her face. "What? What is this?" she whispered. "The sale," I said simply. "What sale?" I took a sip of tea. "The house." Her voice cracked. You sold the house?" I nodded. "Cash deal, private, no listings." For a moment she just stared at me, her hand frozen midair. Then she laughed. A short, shaky laugh that died almost instantly. "You're joking," she said, though her voice was trembling now. "No. You can't do that. It's my house." "It was," I said quietly, placing the teacup down. "Until today." Her face twisted, anger flashing in her eyes. "You can't, that's illegal." "You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted gently. And I did. Silence. Heavy burning silence. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator again, the ticking of the clock, even the sound of her breathing. Fast, shallow. She pushed the paper back toward me, her hand shaking. You wouldn't actually..." I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. I told you, I said softly. I'd pay the rent. She blinked, confused. What? I let the pause stretch, long enough to feel like a lifetime. Then I said it, because I just paid the rent. In full. The words dropped between us like stones into water. No echo. No reply. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The paper in her hand crinkled. Her knuckles turned white. I stood up slowly, the chair legs scraping the floor. For once she didn't move. Didn't shout. Didn't breathe. Just stared at the document like it was a loaded gun. The air around us shifted. Lighter for me, heavier for her. The balance had changed. The silence, once my prison, was now my weapon. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair and slipped it on. My heart was calm, almost eerily so. She looked up at me finally, her voice small, cracking at the edges. You can't just leave like this. I smiled again. Not cruel, not gloating, just final. I already did. The house creaked softly as I walked to the door. The air smelled of rain again, faint, clean, forgiving. Behind me, I heard her whisper something, maybe my name, maybe a curse. I didn't turn around, because for the first time in years, I didn't owe her an answer. When love turns into betrayal, the loudest screams don't come from anger. They come from disbelief. Stay till the end, because this is where silence finally breaks. The scream that came out of her wasn't anger. It was disbelief. It tore through the air, sharp and raw, shaking the windows and everything inside me that hadn't already shattered. You what? She cried, her voice trembling between fury and fear. You sold it? You sold my house? She was standing in the middle of the living room, barefoot, wild-haired, her phone still clutched in one hand, the other pointing at the papers scattered across the floor. Her eyes were wide, the same hazel I once loved to see light up when I came home with gifts or surprises. Now those same eyes burned through me like fire. I didn't flinch. I just stood there still by the table, the half-empty teacup beside me cooling fast. The sale documents were already signed, sealed, final. There was no undoing it. I built this house, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake, not this time. When you were still learning to walk. Every wall in here has my sweat in it. Every crack in the floor knows my name. You think it was ever yours? She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find the words. Then they came, fast, furious, and heavy. You ruined everything. You destroyed my life. Maybe I had. Maybe I needed to. Her words kept coming, one after another, sharper each time. You're sick. You did this just to hurt me. You couldn't stand me being in control for once, could you? I didn't move. I watched her throw the papers off the table, watched them scatter like broken feathers. You think this was about control? I said slowly. I sold it because love doesn't live here anymore. You wanted me gone, and I'm giving you exactly that. Her hands shook. Her lips trembled, but her pride wouldn't let her cry, not yet. You had no right. I laughed softly, bitterly. No right? I built this roof when your mother left us. I held it up when you couldn't even reach the light switch. Don't talk to me about rights. Her voice cracked then, and the sound hit me harder than I expected. You didn't even ask me. You didn't even talk to me first. I took a slow step toward her. When you screamed at me to pay rent or get out, did you talk to me first? She went quiet. For the first time, she had nothing to throw back. The silence between us grew thick, heavy with everything we hadn't said in years. I looked around the room. The couch where she'd fallen asleep watching cartoons. The wall where her school pictures used to hang. Now there was nothing but blank paint and the echo of our voices. I didn't sell it to hurt you, I said softly, almost to myself. I sold it to remind you what these walls are worth when love's not inside them. That's when something in her broke. She lunged forward, grabbed the remaining papers off the table and tore them in half. Once, twice, again and again, the sound of paper ripping mixing with her sobs. You can't do this, she cried, shredding what was already gone. You can't take everything from me. But you can't tear away a sale already sealed. The pieces fluttered to the floor like ashes falling at her feet. She stood there breathing hard, tears streaking down her cheeks, her mascara running like black rain. I should have felt pity. Maybe a few years ago I would have. But pity is a luxury for those who haven't been humiliated in their own living room. I said nothing. I just watched. Then something shifted. Her anger cracked open, and what spilled out wasn't fury anymore. It was fear. Her hands fell to her sides. Her shoulders slumped. "You don't understand," she whispered. Her voice was small, fragile, almost childlike. I tilted my head. "Then make me understand." Her eyes darted away from mine, to the torn papers, to the floor, anywhere but at me. Her voice shook when she finally spoke. I was going to sell it too. The words hit me like a slow echo. "What?" I was going to sell it myself," she said, her breath catching. But I needed time. I needed to do what? I asked, though deep down I already knew. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. To pay off a debt. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "A debt? What debt?" Her silence was my answer. I could see it in her eyes, shame. Heavy, suffocating shame. Then it all came out between sobs. "It was him," she said. "The man you heard me talking to. He said he could help me. He said if I just put the house in my name, he'd handle the bills, the rent, everything." I felt my stomach turn. "And you believed him?" "I loved him," she shouted as if that made it better. "He said he'd pay me back. He said—" She stopped mid-sentence, her breath hitching. "He left. He took everything." I closed my eyes, the truth burning through me like fire. She hadn't wanted me out because of money. She'd wanted control, and so she could trade it, use it, gamble it away for love that was never real. For a moment, I saw her. Not the angry woman screaming at me, but my little girl again. Terrified, ashamed. Her hands trembling the same way they did when she broke a vase and begged me not to be mad. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked quietly. She shook her head, tears falling freely now. "Because you'd say I told you so. Because you'd look at me the way you're looking now." I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. I'd dreamed of this moment. Her regret, her realization, her guilt. Yet standing here, it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. I looked at her. This woman who'd once called me her hero, who now stood broken in the ruins of what we both destroyed. "I would have helped you," I whispered. "Even after everything, I would have helped." She covered her face with her hands, crying harder. I didn't want help. I just wanted to fix it. I took a step back, the distance between us growing again, this time permanent. I picked up my coat from the chair. The fabric felt heavy, damp in my hands. I slipped it on slowly, every motion deliberate. She didn't notice. She was still sobbing, whispering apologies between breaths that came too fast. I watched her, the same way a man watches a fire he knows he can't save. It was already burning down. I walked toward the door. The floor creaked beneath my feet. The same sound that had once followed her first steps. I paused at the threshold, hand on the knob, and turned back one last time. "You wanted me gone," I said softly. "Now I am." She lifted her head, eyes red, cheeks streaked. "Where will you go?" she whispered through tears. I didn't answer. I stepped outside instead. The air was cool, biting against my face. The sky had opened up, a faint drizzle beginning to fall. I could still hear her crying inside, muffled through the walls. I looked back at the house, the one I built, the one she broke. For a second, I almost turned around. Almost. But then I remembered the sound of her voice that day. "Pay the rent or get out." And that was enough to keep me walking. The rain picked up, washing the dust off the driveway, off my shoes, off my hands. It felt clean, like starting over. As I reached the gate, I whispered to myself, almost smiling, "You wanted freedom, didn't you?" Behind me, her sobs grew distant, fading into the sound of rain hitting the roof I'd once called home. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. I already had somewhere in mind. Every ending has a quiet hour, the moment when you stop fighting and finally let go. Stay till the end, because this isn't a story about winning. It's about what's left when revenge runs out. The day I left, the sun hit the porch the same way it had the day we moved in, warm, unbothered, pretending not to notice the wreckage it was shining on. The air smelled like rain and endings. That sharp, heavy scent that comes before a storm, but after the damage is already done. I stood there for a long while, the key heavy in my hand, the same brass one that had hung on a hook near the door for decades. It had lost its shine, edges worn smooth from years of turning, locking, unlocking, like a heartbeat you take for granted until the day it stops. The street was quiet. Even the wind seemed careful not to disturb me. My old neighbor, Mrs. Khan, peeked through her curtain but didn't wave. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. I stepped inside. The house greeted me with silence. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that reminds you you're alone. The first thing I saw was the wall by the staircase, the one where we measured her height every year. Little pencil marks climbing upward in uneven lines. Beside one of them, in faint childish handwriting, she had once written, "Taller than Daddy now." I ran my hand over the wall, feeling the grooves where the pencil pressed too hard. I could almost hear her giggle when I told her she'd stop growing if she kept laughing that much. I smiled at the memory, soft, bitter, fading. Next was the living room. The burn mark on the table was still there. The scar left by her 10th birthday cake when she leaned too close and her hair caught fire for a split second before I put it out. She cried for hours that night, and I held her until she fell asleep, whispering that everything was okay. I told her we'd laugh about it one day. Funny how promises age. The couch still had the same sag in the middle, where we used to sit together watching late-night TV. She'd always fall asleep halfway through the movie, her head resting on my shoulder. I'd stay still the whole time, afraid to move, afraid to wake her. Now the couch looked like a ghost, the imprint of us still there, but the people gone. I made my way to the kitchen. The smell of old wood and forgotten dinners hung in the air. I opened the cabinet, the one that always jammed halfway. Inside, the chipped blue mug she used to love still sat on the shelf. "World's Best Dad" written across it in faded letters, the handle cracked but still holding on. I almost took it with me. Almost. But some things are meant to stay buried where they broke. In the corner by the window, I left a letter. Not to explain. Not to justify. Just to remember it wasn't long. Just a few lines written in my cleanest handwriting. "I forgive you. Not because you asked, but because I need to sleep again. One day when the noise in your head quiets down, you'll understand. I didn't sell the house to hurt you. I sold it because love had already moved out. I didn't sign it. She'd know who it was from." I folded the paper neatly, placed it on the table beside her old mug, and weighed it down with the house key. That felt right, like sealing the past shut for good. As I walked toward the door, the house seemed to sigh. The floorboards creaked under my feet, soft and familiar, like an old friend saying goodbye. I turned once more, scanning the rooms. Every corner was filled with ghosts. The laughter, the shouting, the silent dinners that spoke louder than words ever could. For years, this place had been both my pride and my prison. Now it was neither. It was just wood, concrete, and memories I no longer wanted. Outside, the clouds began to break. Thin streams of sunlight cut through, painting long golden lines across the porch. I stood there watching dust dance in the light, thinking how even dust gets its moment to shine before it settles. The money from the sale had already been transferred. I had sent it somewhere quiet, somewhere she'd never think to look. A small trust hidden under another name. I didn't do it to mock her. I did it because I didn't trust either of us anymore. Her to keep it or me to give it back. Maybe one day she'd understand. Maybe she'd finally realize that revenge isn't about taking something from someone. It's about teaching them the value of what they took from you. I started the car. The old engine coughed to life, stubborn as always. As I rolled down the driveway, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked older than I remembered. Not weaker, just emptied. The house grew smaller behind me, its edges blurring through the glass. The closer I got to the road, the lighter I felt, like shedding a skin that had grown too tight. But underneath that lightness was something heavier. Loneliness. A silence I couldn't shake. People think revenge ends with triumph. It doesn't. It ends in silence. The kind that follows after all the shouting is done. I drove past the park where she learned to ride her bike, past the school that used to send her home with paintings of stick figures holding hands. Each place felt like a chapter already written, already closed. I don't remember how long I drove before the sky began to fade into pinks and oranges. The road stretched ahead, endless, empty. The kind of road that doesn't ask where you're going, only if you're sure you're not turning back. I thought of her then. Not the woman who screamed at me to leave, not the one who tore the papers in half, but the little girl who once ran barefoot across the porch, hair flying, laughing like the world would never change. I tried to picture her face, but memories have a cruel way of blurring when you want them most. Somewhere deep inside, I hoped she'd be okay. That she'd learn. That the man who hurt her would stay gone. That one day she'd stand in a home of her own and understand what it truly takes to build one, not with bricks, but with patience, forgiveness, and something she'd lost long ago: humility. A few weeks passed before I drove by again. Not on purpose, and at least that's what I told myself. The house looked different now. The curtains were drawn, the lights off. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Maybe she'd left too. Maybe she couldn't stay in a place that reminded her of everything she'd lost. The lawn had started to grow wild, grass reaching high over the path. The new owner hadn't moved in yet. The sold sign still leaned slightly crooked near the gate. For a second, I thought about stopping, about walking up and looking through the window just once more, but I didn't. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I sat there with the engine running, listening to the ticking of the cooling metal, the sound of distant thunder rolling across the clouds. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel, restless. It's strange, the things you notice when you let go. How quiet the world becomes. No voices, no footsteps, no demands, just you and your thoughts. And sometimes that silence feels like peace. Other times it feels like punishment. I don't know which one I deserve. The rain started again, soft at first, then steady. Drops streaked down the windshield, blurring the house from view completely. I let it. Some memories are kinder when they fade. I put the car in gear. The tires crunched over the gravel as I pulled away from the curb. The wipers swayed back and forth, clearing the view ahead, the road stretching into the horizon, pale and infinite. As I drove, I caught myself whispering, maybe to her, maybe to no one. She took my peace, I said, my voice barely audible over the rain. I sold her comfort. A small broken smile crept across my face, the kind that hurts more than it heals. I guess we're even now. The road swallowed the sound and the house disappeared behind me for the last time.